Okay. Thank you all for coming. Beautiful first springish day, in my opinion. So hopefully it lasts. We're going to go right to. I need the mic though. No, these guys can't.
Oh, yeah, you're loud.
Okay, I am loud enough. We're going to get to our speaker to start. And actually, I have to ask who has moment of reflection. Do we know? Oh, Paula does. Okay, I didn't have it in my notes. So we'll do that after our speaker. So Tom is going to introduce our speaker today.
Matt Lackmeyer currently is the farm manager for the Madison area food pantry. Up. Okay, louder. I'll try. I'm not as loud as Kevin. He has held this position since May of 2020. His organization was a recipient of the Kiwanis Community Award grants we gave out last fall here. Matt received his BA degree and master's degree in wildlife ecology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Another good over there, being a good UW grad. He's also from Madison, which is another big plus, as far as I'm concerned. Us indigenous people guys stick together. He states that his career object is serving his community through food production and education. Before his current position, he worked as the gardening specialist for the Arboretum and Public Gardens at the University of California in Davis. Prior to that, he was an organic farmer and founder of the Kingfisher Farm and stayed there from 2010 to 2018. During that time, he also worked as a program coordinator and eventually the program director for the Center for Land-Based Learning in Winters, California. He was also a long-term substitute teacher, science teacher at Deerfield High School in Deerfield, Wisconsin. Please welcome Lackmeyer.
Come on in. We're trying to get the camera to capture the speaker at the Zoom.
I forgot cameras at home, so. Let's see.
Yeah, Eileen's short though.
They need you to. Share screen. Leonard, you didn't hear me this morning.
And Jerry.
And wherever the,
Right there, I think that
See-
table looking one.
okay, you do that because I don't know how to do that one.
Okay,
I can-
so
And
I'm
then they can see that. And if you can
Try and keep your face in there, then they can see there.
okay, try this. Can you guys hear me as I speak? Okay, so I think I could have probably spent a half an hour talking about all the different jobs I've had before this one. It was not a linear path I took in my career. So I've been a high school teacher, but the most relevant experience I had was Kingfisher Farm, which I started out in California in the Sacramento Valley. That was sort of a side project as my wife was going to physical therapy school, and it was something I got interested in doing, actually, helping just grow vegetables in my backyard and my grandpa's backyard too. And so that experience led me to take this position I currently occupy with the Madison Area Food Pantry Gardens. And before I get really far into it, how many of you, before we received the Community Service Award, had heard about the Madison Area Food Pantry Gardens before? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's more than I expected. Okay, so we've been in existence as a nonprofit organization officially since 2014, but unofficially, we started out as kind of a food recovery organization, putting on red vests, going to the farmers market on the square and recovering the leftover vegetables after sales were finished and taking those to the food pantries. And that happened in about the year 2000. So we've been in this business of food recovery and growing and addressing food insecurity in Dane County for about 22 years now. So I'm going to try to click a button and try to get to the presentation mode. It looks like it worked. So our mission is striving to help our neighbors by providing local food pantries with first choice, nutritious, and culturally relevant produce. And that mission actually changed a couple of years ago when we added culturally relevant to the mission. So what that means is making sure that what we're growing and what we're gleaning from neighboring farms is of interest to the clients that use and rely on the food pantries for their groceries. So I'll get a little bit more into how we determine that as I go through these slides. And I just put these together yesterday. This is my first time going through it. I'm sort of informal and I am a farmer, so I am not a career presenter. And if you guys have questions for clarity.
You're an educated farmer.
I'm an educator, yeah, in a previous life, yes. So if you have any questions as I go, please feel free to just go ahead and speak up or raise your hand. I'll try to look up once in a while. And I'll definitely have time for questions once I finish as well. So this is where we grow. Soon after we started recovering leftovers from the farmers market, we realized that wasn't sufficient. So we started borrowing a quarter acre, 2 acres, 3 acres here and there around town, and growing some of the things that we knew grew well here and were needed in the food pantries. And so some of these gardens, we now have 11 listed. Some are member gardens, some are affiliate gardens. The difference being who covers liability and the cost to run them. So the member gardens are completely run and supported by the Madison Area Food Pantry Gardens organization and fundraising efforts. And then the affiliate gardens get support. We grow their transplants at Night Hollow Nursery, and we support them throughout the growing season in different ways, but they are managed by an outside organization, oftentimes a church. You can see the Verona Clinic at the bottom of the list there. That's about a quarter acre in size. And so we're mainly on the west and southwest side of Madison. We have been on the east side in the past, but it was just too difficult for our volunteers to get on the belt line, to get there at 4:30 when volunteer sessions start to get the work done. So we ended up dropping those sites and just focusing on one side of town. And some of those gardens, so for example, the Emmett Schulte Garden, named after our founder, Emmett Schulte, a member of Queen of Peace Church, has been our founding garden for, it's been in production for about 20 years now. Another one is a Lacey Garden on Wayland Road in Fitchburg. That's been, I think we're entering our 18th year of growing on that particular site. And this just shows what the gardens produce, and that's primarily a function of their size. So the size of our gardens varies significantly. So the Verona Clinic Pantry is only about a quarter acre. It's near the new Verona High School. And it's used by the people that go to the clinic for their checkups. So they grow a lot of tomatillos and jalapenos to, provide groceries for the Hispanic families that see their doctor at that clinic. And the excess goes to the Badger Prairie Needs Network, just a few miles down the road. Contrast that with Forward Garden, which is the property that I was hired to manage in 2020. That's 12 tillable acres, and we currently have about 4.5 acres in production right now. We've tried to start small and grow sustainably so that I didn't get burnt out too quickly in my job as farm manager. So we didn't quite know what how it would be received by the community and the pantries, and how much they could actually receive and accommodate in the pantry. So we started growing in 2020. And it was successful in that everything that we planted actually produced a yield that was usable and high quality, and went to about 24 different outlets that first year.
You muted yourself.
Did I? How did I do that?
Oh, maybe I did.
Oh, you control it.
And this past year,
You're muted though.
is it?
Yeah, there we go. There.
Okay. Well, I can hear.
No, that's you, Kevin.
Oh,
Sorry, guys.
okay.
Try
it.
All right, I'll just keep going.
Sorry.
So this is a useful graph just put together by one of our marketing members. Kind of shows where the different slices of pie come from, and it shows leading being a pretty significant part of what we're able to contribute annually. approximately a third of the poundage that we're able to get to the pantries comes from elsewhere, that places that we don't manage or oversee. So the UW is a real strategic partner for us because the West Madison Egg Research Station has these phenomenal varieties of organic produce growing right there off Mineral Point Road, 3 miles forward garden. The funding to grow those comes from grants, and they can't sell that recoup any of the costs they're not supposed to compete with other growers in the region. And so it's all available for donation. So they let us know when it's available. We go in there after they harvest and collect their data, and then it's available for us to distribute. So, and Arlington's another place we go up and we get, truckloads of cabbage or potatoes or whatever else they have available. Potatoes, cabbage, and peppers primarily. Keep going.
Gotta get rid of the box, cat box.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't see it on my screen, but
yeah, sorry.
okay. Okay, so this is what we grow. So throw out some vegetables that you would like to think we grow. What do you guys have in your diet that you really couldn't live without? Raspberries. We do have a garden that grows raspberries.
Broccoli.
We grow so much broccoli. We actually 2 successions. So we actually started that a couple of days ago in the greenhouse, and we'll plant that as our first crop early May. A lot cabbage and yeah, we do have 2 gardens that have asparagus. So you guys are getting into some perennial crops, and that brings up an important point that a lot of our leases are annual leases on these properties that we are managing and growing food on. Forward Garden being among them. So we have a 1-year lease that we've now renewed twice. So we're entering our 3rd growing season at Forward Garden. It is only going until the end of the growing season. So March of next year is when we need to have it renewed by to continue. So we have not invested in orchards or raspberries or asparagus yet because the return on that investment would be more than a year. And we want to make sure we are good stewards of the funds that we receive. And so we focus primarily on mixed annual vegetables and fruits at Forward Garden in particular.
So what is the reasoning for the yearly renewal? Is it property that's going to be developed?
So that could be another presentation as well. So Forward Garden is at the Pope Farm Homestead. So it's on a 15-acre property. There's 12 tillable acres, and I'll show you, actually, I'll advance real quick to show you that. So in the lower left corner of that left photo is Forward Garden highlighted. You can see a little island of buildings surrounded by the 12 tillable acres. That's 3 acres of a beautiful white historic 112-year-old barn, 111-year-old farmhouse adjacent to that, and then a nice machine shed, all very functional. And we use the barn and we use a machine shed. The farmhouse is a separate lease, but it's owned by the Pope Zorb family, who gave land to create Pope Farm Conservancy that surrounds us. So you can see a couple of fields up from Forward Garden, you see Pope Farm Conservancy there. That's about 110-acre property owned by the town of Middleton because it was given to them by the Pope Zorb family. Anyway, what is going to happen with that property ultimately is an ongoing discussion now for several years. We're hoping to purchase it as a nonprofit organization to keep it in agriculture. That's what some of the family wants, but it's not a done deal by any stretch. So we're hoping to get a longer term lease so that we can invest in some infrastructure like a well. And I'm going way out of order. That's a great question, and I'll keep trying to answer that as I go, but we'll revisit that if I haven't done an adequate job when I finish these slides. So what we grow, almost everything on these, we're interested in growing. The mixed annual vegetables on the right. So we've administered a produce survey to clients at 8 of our outlets, so that the people using the pantries, relying on those pantries for groceries, can tell us directly what they want to receive and what format they would like to receive it in. So you can see beets, for example, we can provide them loose, we can top them and bag them. We can provide them in a variety of formats with a little bit of light processing through partnerships that we can develop or already have developed. So we did that for the first time about a year ago, got that feedback, used that to determine what to grow at Forward Garden, what quantities. And we'll continue to get that feedback at least every other year from the different outlets that we're serving so that we know for sure we're growing what is desired and what is needed in larger quantity. So that is our effort to stay culturally relevant to the population we're serving.
How many of the gardens are irrigated?
None. I mean, we have rainwater that we catch off the metal barn on the roof at Forward Garden, and it's on a hill. It's a recessional, glacial moraine. So the barn's at the top of the hill. We have a 2,000-gallon drum that catches the rain that we gravity feed down to drip irrigation for our carrots and beets and other direct-seeded crops.
I was just wondering the extent that you can guarantee each year that you're going to have production.
I mean, right. I mean, last year was a great struggle, challenge for us because we had 5 weeks without a single drop of precipitation. At Forward Garden in particular, we had all of our vegetables planted. May and June were almost completely dry. So we had the fire department come out with 3,000 gallons on the truck to fill up the tank that we had emptied. And the volunteers all May and June were hand watering the thousands of transplants. So we're getting into how we grow, right? We rely a lot on community members. And until I was hired in May of 2020, we had not a single employee in our first 18 years of existence. So it was all a volunteer run organization. And it still is primarily. All the other sites don't have a paid employee. We're currently hiring summer interns. I have an interview coming up just after I talk with you actually for a summer applicant. So we're trying to increase our capacity in ways like increasing oversight of volunteers that continue to want to book, volunteer gigs with us. So this past year we had over all of our gardens, over 8,000 volunteer hours contributed. I think at Forward Garden, we had something like 1,400 different individuals contributing hours out there. Many of them were kids. So the groups that came out were varied. Some were corporate groups. So Exact Sciences, for example, Epic, they booked every other Saturday with me, 9 to 12. So there was a group of friends of Food Pantry Gardens that came out from Epic and filled our walk-in cooler every time they were out with whatever was available to harvest. And they're incredibly energetic, very happy to be out of the office and talking with each other in person. So that has become a great partnership. The Friends of Pope Farm Conservancy, they do a lot of work just over the fence at the Conservancy, helping to maintain the trails and doing education programs. So some of them have jumped the fence and started helping us. And they're my go-to for large groups that we need to provide an education element for their outings. A lot of church groups, Asbury Church, Queen of Peace, Divine Church in Fitchburg, Middleton Community Church is across the street at the base of the hill from us, and they are actually incredibly supportive in in-kind donations. They give us space in the church and we need to interview in-person applicants. They bring their summer servants out, the youth group that wants to do service learning. So they help in the garden that way. And now we're a line item in their budget annually because they want to support us financially as well, which is fantastic. And this number, this list just keeps growing. So here I've highlighted the same list, and the red font shows you the youth groups. So quite a few of the groups that we had last year were kids because they're looking for safe ways for their kids to get into the community, to learn about food insecurity, to do something to serve that community. So it's a really productive way for them to spend a couple of hours, and it's an educational outing for them, whether I intentionally try to make it that or not. They're just doing something they don't typically do. So they get quite a bit out of it, and so do we. So it's a really good mutually beneficial relationship. The two I've highlighted are ones I want to talk a little bit more about. We have a few more outlets actually we're planning on serving this coming year. So Middleton Youth Center is based at Cromery Middle School. They're going to start teaching some cooking classes for the middle schoolers, and they'll use some of our produce every Wednesday morning for about 8 weeks in the summertime because it's close to my house. It's easy for me to deliver to them. And I think it's a good use of some of our blemished produce. If they want to make paninis, sandwiches out of some of the stuff that we grow. Yeah.
You're fading. I can't hear.
I'm fading. I'm so sorry. Must be tired. Okay, so the Lucier Community Education Center and the Pope Farm Elementary School. So here we are back at the map I showed you earlier. That left hand picture, the far northeast corner, you can see the Pope Farm Elementary School, the pin, and that's about 1,200 feet from our farm. So that used to be part of the same homestead. So the Pope Farm included the 39 acres that are now owned by the Middleton School District. They built the elementary school on site, and the hope is that the elementary school is there, K through 4th grade is there. They're hoping to build the middle school south of that on the same 39 acres. And once that is done and they're fully enrolled, there could be 1,500 kids age K through 7th grade right there within sight and walking distance of the farm and conservancy. So I would have loved to go there if I was a kid. This school. And so there's an aerial photo. Basically, the drone, Larry Binning's drone, by the way, is almost over the school, taking that picture of Forward Garden looking towards the southwest. So you can see the big white barn I mentioned in the farmhouse, and then we're across the street from this huge water tower that the city of Madison put in that we have no access to whatsoever, which is really frustrating. All right, so Pope Farm Elementary School, there is one science educator on staff in the Middleton School District for the elementary students, and he's based at Pope Farm. So, and he also happens to be a farmer in New Glarus. So he was really enthusiastic about getting those kids out of the classroom, onto the farm, into the conservancy to learn about nature, to learn about agriculture. And he's become a good friend. And we had all of the kids that went to Pope Farm in 2021 come out to Forward Garden to plant our pumpkin patch. So all of the kids, a few at a time, it was kind of a big endeavor, a lot of logistics, a pretty warm June day before their school year ended last June 2021. But every class ended up getting a couple of rows. And in their art class, they helped make signs for all the teachers. So the teachers' classrooms were labeled like where they were going to plant their pumpkins, so they could come back throughout the summer and help tend them and see those vines grow and start producing the pumpkins that they chose. They selected the variety from the packets I had available. That didn't happen as much as I had hoped. We had some of the kids come back throughout the summer with their parents. And then the plan was for them to come back in October and harvest those pumpkins for a PTO fundraiser to support future field trips for those kids. That did happen. The kids didn't come back to harvest, so I just drove them over there. We put them on a wagon. It was a semi-successful fundraiser, and it was cool for the kids to be able to take those pumpkins home and buy one if they wanted to, or tell their neighbors to come and buy one to support the school. And this is just a letter from the principal supporting a grant proposal I put together last year and then just recycled and submitted Thursday again because we weren't successful getting it. But I was asked if I'm making good use of the money that you guys provided. So we were recipients of a community service award. It was $2,500. It was a wonderfully generous gift. And it went into a fund used for all kinds of expenses, including these. So seed purchase, equipment purchase to make sure the kids can be there. So like mobile shade structures, they have some shade in June when they're coming out, water dispensers, that kind of thing. So I'm trying to build up a pot of money so that we have resources available to support these kinds of efforts. And you guys were the seed money for that. So thank you again for that contribution. The other group I wanted to mention was the Lucier Community Education Center. So that is a building right next to Jefferson Middle School, where I went to school off Gammon Road. They have a summer program for the incoming 6th graders. And they contacted us actually in 2020 once they learned Forward Garden was up and running. And they started coming out every Tuesday to explore the garden and look at the vegetables we had growing, and also to help harvest, because one of the food pantries that we've been supporting is at the Lucier Center. So the kids are members of families that sometimes are clients of those pantries the kids are helping to harvest vegetables for. And then they can also pick a bag of whatever they want to take home for their families if they're interested. We invested in a chicken coop last winter and had the nicest flock of hens I've ever met in my entire life. Like too friendly, actually. They would follow us around to places they weren't allowed. But they were a great distraction for any kids that want to come out to the farm and just experience a farm. And oftentimes the kids were up there feeding the chickens the vegetable scraps while their parents were in the garden with me helping to harvest. So it was kind of a win-win for everybody. And we're hoping to get more chickens this spring. And actually, that's part of the grant I proposed last Thursday, using the life cycle. There's a unit that kids have at Pope Farm Elementary School learning about the life cycle. They actually incubate turkey and chicken eggs at school from the farm in New Glarus that their science educator owns and runs. And he's offered those chicks to Pope Farm, which the kids could then have a good excuse to visit throughout the summer and take care of with me at the farm while we grow vegetables together for the pantries. So that's the hope. We'll see what happens. So I mentioned a couple of these partnerships and plans for the future. Little John's Kitchen is it's a nonprofit organization. They're trying to move into a place off Verona Road to be able to create 40,000 meals weekly to the Boys and Girls Club, to Meals on Wheels, to pantries, other emergency food programs throughout Dane County. So they're building capacity to use way more vegetables than we could possibly supply. And the plan, we actually gave them 3,000 pounds of our blemished produce this past year. So when I had a truckload of cabbage from Arlington, for example, if the pantries were saturated in cabbage, I would just take it to Little John's and they would make sauerkraut or kimchi or something out of it. So that'll be a increasingly important partnership as we continue to grow and expand our acreage. Collaboration for Good is a group of like women of color in the Madison area that it's another nonprofit organization. So it's like last mile transportation logistics, trying to get produce from our gardens, from our farms to the places where it's needed without me having to drive our Dodge pickup truck all over town. The partnerships will be more and more important as I get busier and busier on site. And then UW, I mentioned that those egg research stations are really useful to us in terms of source of great high quality produce. And then the Pope Farm Elementary School, and then additional outlets that we're planning on serving. There's an Alice Elementary School really close to here. I don't actually know exactly where it is. So they have a school garden now, but the kids that attend that school come from 6 miles away, the other side of Southtown. And it's one of the food deserts. So if you look, this is created by the city of Madison. It shows you where in Madison there's food access issues. Oftentimes it's coupled with lower income housing where people don't have transportation to get to the grocery store to buy their produce. They're relying on the convenience store at the corner, for example. So we're trying to be intentional in our building of partnerships around town so we can get our first choice, nutritious, culturally relevant produce to those areas of Madison where it's not in large enough quantities. So Alice Elementary School is a place I'm really interested in partnering with. And that actually came out of the Garden Expo. I met a retired teacher there who put in the garden and wants to continue to help those kids. So she put me in touch with our social worker and we'll see what happens there. So other plans for the future, I mentioned briefly, we're hoping to purchase the property, in which case we'll have the ability to put in an apple orchard. I mean, I think everybody who filled out our survey of the 200 clients using our pantries in 2021 wanted more fruit. I mean, they wanted raspberries, they wanted strawberries. We have strawberries growing. They wanted apples, they wanted peaches, which are possible to grow here, by the way. So there's going to be a lot more potential to grow and expand our production to more diverse, more desirable crops if we have a longer lease or ownership of some property. So that's been a major initiative these past couple of years with a silent phase-like capital campaign to raise enough money to purchase a land. Until then, the stewardship and sustainability piece, rainwater catchment, something I mentioned. So we have about 2,500 gallon storage capacity on site that's gravity fed or just transferred via tank in the truck to the plots it's needed. We have some drip irrigation infrastructure in place. I'll keep building that up as I get more funding to do so we can make sure we're able to give the crops what they need and don't have crop failures because of dry or hot weather. We have a native plant garden. We had our first Whitty Schulte intern last summer. We had some plants donated through a county program called Plant Dane. We asked for 100 more plants to expand that pollinator garden because we have some margins along Old Sauk Road that we can't grow vegetables in. That used to be tall grass prairie at one point, and I'd love to recreate some of that habitat for pollinators. Biodigester, I'm not even sure what that is, but it was offered to us. So we might pursue that as a way of sort of recycling some of the nutrients of the things that we've grown and not been able to use or harvested from. I don't know what the byproduct is for a biodigester. And then solar power for our walk-in cooler. So we'll have some more energy expenses if we build a greenhouse, for example, or if we have a well and pump on site. So we're hoping to be a good example of sustainable, farming, green infrastructure. All these things are good learning experiences for the kids and youth groups that come through Forward Garden. So we're hoping to be a good example of how to have a sustainable growing operation that's good for the environment. So the complex, food system we're part of, it's intricate, and we're serving many outlets that are pantries that are served by the food banks, and there's all these interwoven connections that we're still learning how to navigate and figuring out how do we fit in. So we're going to be engaging in strategic planning this fall to think really critically as a board about how we can best serve the community. Are we just growing vegetables? Are we growing and distributing vegetables? Are we growing and lightly processing vegetables? Where do we fit? Where should we put our resources so we can be of best use to the community as a whole? And how can we avoid duplicating efforts? So that's a big question that we're going to be working to answer as a group this next year. And this is a concept design that was put together by a landscape architect showing Forward Garden. You can see the vegetable plots on the east side of the hill that are currently in existence. Most of the buildings there in the center are there, with the exception of the greenhouse. And then we're hoping to have some orchards, blueberries and apples probably on the slopes that are good for for trees and perennial crops we don't want to till up and cause erosion. And then the west side, we started planting in the mixed annual vegetables as well. Is close to the end. So this is a nice green photo prior to St. Patrick's Day with Will and his dad schlepping pumpkins up the hill. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
You mentioned that you were growing jalapenos, and that was obviously for the Hispanic population. Like, what does the Vietnamese population wish? Other Asian groups that want specific. Can you repeat the question? So
yeah, the question was, we grow some produce that's targeted towards the Latino communities, cilantro and jalapenos being among those, tomatillos as well. How do we meet the needs of other dietary preferences? For example, Southeast Asian cultures. So we, in 2020, started partnering with the Hmong Institute, which had a food distribution effort twice a month, serving 80 families out of a church off Femrite Drive, Stoughton Road, near Second Harvest Food Bank. They are now up to 350 families that they serve on a monthly basis. And every Monday, we take produce from our garden to them. And they, in 2021, gave me seed that some of their elders had brought with them from out from 45 years ago, and they save that seed every year. They were, because it ended up being jicama. I mean, it was like this strange stunted looking vine that I thought was going to be nothing. And then we dug up the tuber and it was this monstrous jicama plant. That was pretty fun, a nice surprise for the volunteers last October. So that's a very good example of trying to support. So they gave us seed. They're going to give us seed again in a couple of weeks so that we're ready to grow. And we're actually going to set aside a plot so that their elders can come visit that plot and use it kind of as like a therapy. They've hired a psychologist and a therapist for that population through the Hmong Institute, who's going to accompany the elders because they may have, you know, grown up on a farm, almost certainly did, and haven't had access to that kind of land for 45 years since they moved here. So the hope is that we can sort of experience that is restorative. Yeah.
You told us your campus is produce. Does some other agency provide eggs or slabs of beef or other foodstuffs to your clients?
Yeah, so the protein is lacking a little bit. So we don't have clients directly. We're just supporting food pantries, trying to increase the supply of fresh, nutritious produce. The Second Harvest Food Bank and Community Action Coalition are the two food banks, 16, and they're, I mean, millions of pounds. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that.
How do you decide?
Yeah, the question was how do we decide our manager. Yeah. We have a need to increase organic matter. We're just below 3% organic matter based on, so we, that aerial photo showed you the plots. In between the plots is 12 to 15 feet of buffer strips. Those buffer strips are, I just seeded the clover last month, but they were winter wheat or barley. So we're trying to increase organic matter using planted to things that are rhizomatous and have more inputs, more compost. Having a compost system on site would be really beneficial as well. So we can recycle some of those garden scraps and put it back into the soil.
a question online, what is your budget and where do you get most of your funding?
income from. That's always changing as well. With was 3 years ago before they had any paid staff. Ensure there was like funding for at least the current growing season, if not the next growing season as well. That is no longer a concern. That covers my salary and allowing me to kind of focus on some of these other projects to increase our growing capacity. So the grant out there in the universe. Our focus not so much on
One of the things you had listed was the caterpillar tunnel. What is that?
I can walk through the middle of it. It's like a Gothic style. It's like there's metal every
Season girl.
side and the back side, long linear greenhouse basically, but it's much lower cost and you can move it.
Okay, plastic or?
We had to replace that. You're moving the caterpillar around seasonally typically, so it's not.
Okay, we have a number of different.
So, our mother lately cleaning humor for us things.